Okay, hi guys. I wanted to record some Gemara class for you guys to learn on your own / with me while I'm out. And this was sounded like a last minute thing. So in order to not lose the entire day of learning, I wanted to just upload this video and maybe in 2 parts. But I'll see at the end of this how long it takes me to teach this to you. I was hoping that that for the first part is that each person will sit with their Chromebook and with either headphones or on low or on the speaker in the classroom while everybody can watch on their screen so that you can see it. You can hear me, teach some of this stuff, and then there'll be an assignment for everybody to fill out individually to submit on Google Classroom. That will be fully posted by the end of class. It won't be posted now. It'll end up being posted towards the middle, so to ensure that you spend the first few minutes trying to learn this, as opposed to just jumping right into the questions to answer them and trying to just have the rest of the period free. I really do want you to learn, and I want to show you how important it is to me that it's extremely late at night right now, and my son is still up, not feeling well, so I'm home. And at this hour of the night, I'm still going to try and make a video. So I hope that I know your neshamas appreciate it, and maybe we can learn a little bit today. So for the Gemara, we're going to start. I still get 13 still on the top here, as you can see on my screen. It's on page 15 of the translation sheets. We did this whole page already. I'm going to quickly read through it because some of the questions will be from this page, and then some of the questions will be based on page 16 here. So the Gemara says, as we translated in class, something along the lines. I usually don't translate word for word exactly each time the same. So what I'll do here is just read it to you and translate it as I would. So, Elamai, the Gemara asks, rather, what do you say, ad velo ad bichlal? You're going to tell me that it has to be up until and not including, so you only get to say the tefillah at the beginning of that hour, the 4th hour, at the beginning of plag, at the beginning of the 7th hour, for each of the tefillos, meaning Shachris at 9 o'clock, Mincha at 4:45, and Musaf at 12. So is it ad velo ad bichlal? Is that possible? Because the Gemara is now going to say a problem with that. Ema Seifa, perhaps you can say that the Seifa, the end of the Mishnah, Musaf, and you'll see here it quotes the Gemara, Vishal Musaf and Kol Hayom. This is a quote from our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ad Shava shows, you could put quotation marks right here. That's what I did on the board in the classroom. So the Gemara says, what about this statement of Rabbi Yehuda that you have until the 7th hour? What does that mean? 12 or 1 o'clock? What do you have? So the Gemara says, Vitanya, we learned somewhere else in Gemara. It quotes from later on in the same Masechta, but later on the Gemara brings up the following scenario. And this is a real life scenario. It is definitely possible to happen. Hayu lefan of shtei tfilos. You have in front of you 2 davening times. Achas shel musaf, achas shel mincha. You could either daven achas, one of musaf and one of mincha. Which should you do first? You have to choose one. Which should you do? So the first opinion, the Tanakama, we will call the Chachamim say, Mispal shel mincha v'achar kach musaf. First you do mincha, then you can pray musaf. Why? We discussed yesterday, because of tadir. Take a second to think about it before you listen to me. What does that mean? Why would you do mincha first? Why not musaf first? The answer, they says, shezud tadira v'shezud einu tadira. What does tadir mean? As you wrote down yesterday on line 3, it means common. This one is common. Which one is common? Mincha. We say that more often. Musaf we say maximum, a few times a week, maybe if we're lucky, but mostly once a week on Shabbos. So mincha is more frequent. We give kavod to mincha. Good. Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, no, a person who has the option to say both should mispal shel musaf first, ve'achar kach shel mincha. He should daven musaf first and then mincha. Why? A totally different reason. Yes, mincha is more common, but the problem is zu overes v'zu eino overes. You see, musaf is almost finished. If mincha starts at 12:30 and then you start mincha right away, musaf ends at 1 o'clock apparently, because you have 30 minutes left to daven musaf. Otherwise, it must be that musaf can be set all the way until 1 p.m. Because as you know, we talked about yesterday on the chart, mincha doesn't start until 12:30. So if you hold ad velo ad bichlal, that musaf would end at 12, then it can't be, because there's no such scenario that would ever exist here. It must be that because zu overes v'zu ein overes, because Musaf is going to finish and Mincha time just started, it must be Musaf ends at 1 o'clock. And therefore we see from the raya of this Gemara later on, Vitanya, from a later source, that Rabbi Yehuda must hold that you have ad ve'ad bechlal. You must receive the maximum amount of time to daven. You get that whole 7th hour until 1 p.m. Excellent. So that's where we left off yesterday. There was a machlokes. What do you do first, mincha or musaf? One said, Tanakama said, since it's tadir, you should do mincha first. And Rabbi Yehuda argues and said, no, you should do musaf first because you almost ran out of time for musaf. So we're back to the drawing board. It sounds like there's a raya, there's a proof for either ad velo ad bechal, right? Because plag mincha needs to be, the argument plag has to be different from the chachamim's mincha time, so that seems to be ad velo. And then there's a reason to say ad ve'ad bichlal, because we want to assume that Rabbi Yehuda here is saying that you have until 1 o'clock to daven musaf, so therefore you could have a potential problem of musaf and mincha overlapping, and which should you daven first? So we have a raya, we have a proof for either one. It sounds like it could be ad ve'lo, and it could be ad ve'ad. However, if you say that, I amar bishlama, if you say it's good, ad ve'ad bichal, if you say that it makes sense to say ad ve'ad bichal, I amar means if you want to say, bishlama, it makes sense, ad ve'ad bichal, to say ad ve'ad, you get the full hour till 1 p.m. for mincha, for musaf, hainu dimishkachas lu shtei tfilos b'hadei adodei. This line translates, hainu, it is, dimishkachas lu, you can find, mishkachas means to be found, like lost and find, lost and found, so it can be found. Literally, you can write in the words, it can be found. I know this is new, so for those of you who are not paying attention, 6 minutes and 50 seconds in, now is the time to pay attention. This is new stuff. If you say Musaf can be said till 1 p.m., that makes sense. Why? Hainu dimishkachas lahu. Because we can find, or you can find, shtei tefilos, 2 davening times. I didn't have you translate that because you should know shtei tefilos. Behadeh hadodeh. Oh, this one on this one. Hadeh hadodeh, you literally translate to this on that, meaning mincha and musaf can overlap. You can explain those words to mean it makes sense to say that because then you will be able to find that 2 davenings can potentially overlap, mincha and musaf. Ella, but rather, I amrad, if you say ad velo ad bechal, that by musaf you only have into the 7th hour. So at 12 o'clock you have to be done. Heichi mishkachas lehu. Heichi means how is it possible? Mishkachas lehu, to find shtei tefilos b'hadei adadei. If you see on my screen, how is it possible to find that 2 tefilos overlap? Musaf and mincha will never overlap, and therefore, if musaf and mincha never overlap, then shacharis and mincha don't overlap, and mincha and marav don't overlap. Nothing overlaps, and therefore it can't be that it's ad velo ad bechal. It must be ad ve'ad bechal. The isa la shel mincha, azla la shel musafin, because that means when mincha comes, the isya means when it comes, shel mincha, mincha time, azlala, it will go, shel musafin. Azl means to go. So when it comes, the other one will go. Meaning when mincha arrives, musaf is already done. At 12:30 is the earliest you could daven mincha. That means musaf is completely finished. That is the Gemara so far. It wants to say that it makes sense to say Rabbi Yehuda gives you ad ve'ad bichlal all the way through the 7th hour till 1 p.m. in order to have a time that mincha and musaf overlap. Otherwise, it's an impossibility, and therefore it can't be true because there is a Gemara later that discusses the potential problem of mincha and musaf overlapping. So it must be, and I'm sorry if I sound croaky and I sound if I'm tired and if it's very late and I should and I wish I was in class with you guys, learning with you, geschmack learning with you guys. But I'm hoping that this is at least somewhat doable. And learning this is on Zoom and the recording on YouTube is not the easiest thing. But if you really listen to what I'm saying, you could listen on 1.5 speed and re-listen to it once or twice. You should be able to understand it, and it'll help you really, really well to do really well in Gemara. So again, if you want, it makes sense to say musaf you have until 1 p.m. So therefore you can have mincha and musaf overlap because again mincha starts at 12:30. And therefore you'll have 30 minutes between 12:30 and 1 where they overlap and you're not sure which to say if you have all the way till 1 o'clock to say musaf. But if you say mincha, musaf ends at 12 o'clock, then you'll never have any overlap between mincha and musaf, and therefore that shiloh will never come up. And the fact that the Gemara does bring it up shows us that it's possible, and therefore he must hold you have till 1. Now the Gemara says, Elamai, but rather, what's the problem now? Ad ve'ad b'chlal. You're going to tell me it's ad ve'ad b'chlal? Is that true? Kasha reisha. And as you know from last page, reisha is the opposite of seifa. Reisha means the beginning. And the word kasha you must have heard before in your life. Somebody must have said good kasha to you. They should have said good kasha to you. You ask good questions. Kasha means question. So here you want to say, kasha reisha. It's a question on the beginning of the Mishnah. Remember that? Think about it. If we say ad ve'ad b'chlal, it's going to now be a problem on the beginning of our Mishnah, meaning mincha. There's going to be a problem with mincha because he has to be consistent, Rabbi Yehuda. If it's ad ve'ad b'chlal, it's ad ve'ad b'chlal for all tfilos. Ad dalet shows, ad plag mincha, ad zayin shows. They all have to be ad ve'ad. You have to have that whole 60 minutes. And if you agree to that, you have till 1 p.m. for mincha, for musaf, you must get 6 p.m. for mincha. And remember the problem? The problem was, my ika bein Rabbanan, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. What is there between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan? If you say ad ve'ad b'chlal, that was the first problem we had, and the reason why we thought it was ad ve'lo ad b'chlal. Rabbi Yehuda needs to disagree with the Rabbanan. It's clear from the Mishnah that he argues with them, and therefore it has to be that he says ad ve'lo. But now you're telling me it's ad ve'ad, and as you can see, we go back and forth. We have problems with each one, and we're not sure what to do. We're not sure what to do. And that's where the Gemara leaves it on page 16. We're not sure what to do, and we have to figure out the answer. So last thing for today, and let's see if we can get through it in the next 3.5 minutes, and this way we don't have to have a part 2, but let's get through the page number 17, and then I'll ask you to do an assignment that will be posted in just a few moments. So the Gemara now wants to find an answer, because we can't say ad ve'ad, that only works for musaf. And ad ve'lo ad b'chlal seems to only work for mincha, but a problem for the others. So we have to figure out what the solution is. And the solution is that it must be that you have until 1 p.m. to daven musaf. It has to be. That's obvious, because musaf needs to end when mincha already started. Let me say that again. Mincha and musaf must overlap. So we know from musaf for sure you get till 1, and for sure that means it's ad ve'ad b'chlal. You get the full hour. And therefore by shacharis, it would end at 10 o'clock. You get that full hour from 9 to 10. The 4th hour of day, end to 10. But then what about mincha? So the Gemara is now going to answer how to combat the mincha problem. The way we're going to fix the mincha problem is by drawing the following scenario. Watch this. We're going to draw a whiteboard, and I'll show you on my screen. Watch. Let's try to do a free whiteboard. Let's see if this works. Not sure if this is going to work, but I want to try to draw for you here. Nope, not going to work. Let's try to do this faster. Let's free whiteboard. Let's see. Good. So we have the right. We're going to have this zoomed in. This is going to be plag, which starts at, we said, 4:45. 4:45. We know it ends at 6. So the Gemara is going to say, and I'll do this outside, and then I'll have you answer some questions because I only have a minute and a half, is that we thought he meant this whole thing from 4:45 to 6, but really plag mincha starts from 3:30. Plag starts at 3:30 because plag is not really what we said before. Plag mincha, watch this. Plag mincha, I'm going to erase it right here. We originally said this. I'm going to make it bigger. Watch this. You originally thought plag was here. But now what the Gemara is going to tell you is that plag is actually right only over here. And therefore, the Gemara is going to say that instead of saying plag mincha here, and therefore ad b'chal gives you till 6, it really means is plag mincha from 3:30 to 4:45. And as long as you're saying 4:45 this way, in the first half of mincha katana, not in the second half. We all assumed it was the second half. But if you say the first half is what we're looking at, you zoom in, this would be ad lo ad bichlal, but this would be ad ve'ad bichlal. So he really does say ad ve'ad bichlal for all 3 tfilos. You just need to re-explain mincha that he doesn't mean this section from 4:45 to 6. Rather, he's referring to this section here of 3:30 to 4:45.